Hello world, welcome to the 195th climate change emergency protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It is August 26, 2022. Next week will be the 196th climate change emergency protest, and that'll be September 2nd, 2022. So I'm here, this is General Wadsworth, who's pointing out that the Confederates, the Southern troops, are coming over the hill here. And he recognizes the importance of this ground, and eventually the Union will fall back 1 mile back to Cemetery Ridge, and as General Hancock is setting up the defensive perimeter that will define Gettysburg, the commonly known fishhook. If you look at the Battle of Gettysburg, it's two fishhooks around each other, so it's an easily defended position, and the South was extremely wrong in trying to attack this position, but Lee got his dander up. General Lee got his dander up for Virginia, and he chose to continue with the battle, which was the breaking point on which the South broke itself on the rocks of the Union steadfastness. So slaves were the backbone of all societies, all throughout history, and this sounds shocking to everyone to say such things, but it's a fact. Whether a person is actually enslaved or economically enslaved, they always rely on cheap labor. Any capitalistic system relies on cheap labor to get its economic agenda met. The USA Civil War, it came down to it in the middle of the war, even though it was initially all about that. But it came down to enslavement of one man over another. And this started on a grand scale, actually, in the 1530s here in the United States, which was just America back then, or before it was even America, it was just someplace. But it started in the 1530s. The first Spanish explorer had a slave with him. And then in 1619, it started in America in earnest, 1619 in Hampton, Virginia, where a shipment of slaves came by boat after they stole it from the Spanish in the middle of the ocean. It was brought about over by the English. Slaves were cheap labor, eventually culminated in the Civil War, as I said. I kind of wrote this quote, and I made up this quote myself. I said, freedom was bought with the spilled blood from the steel shot from the end of a gun, whose bullets peeled away the skin and exposed the raw, evil skeleton of our economic and mental foundation. So freedom was bought with the spilled blood from the steel shot from the end of a barrel of a gun, whose bullets peeled away the skin and exposed the raw, evil skeleton of our economic and mental foundation. That pretty well summarizes, what this battle and what slavery is all about. I mean, it just exposes things of humanity that is absolutely disgusting, and it's unbelievable that another group would hold reign over another group, either economically or actually physically, and enslave them. So the Emancipation Proclamation, written by Lincoln in 1862 after the Battle of Antietam, freed slaves that were still in rebellion behind enemy lines. So essentially, I freed your dog who's in your house, and I gave it freedom, but I have no right to go in there and do that at the time. I have no leverage to do that. So, or I freed their kids, and I went in there and said, your kids are hereby free, but they're in your house, so it's kind of hard to free them. But what it did is it exposed the Civil War as a more noble cause than states' rights versus national rights. So it also kept England out of the war for resupplying the South and things like that, because otherwise they'd be seen as supplying the southern slave states. So the Gettysburg Address came about after this battle in November of 1863, and that established in his speech, that was 200-some words, a new birth of freedom, meaning this battle gave birth to a whole new country, and it started to establish what the United States is today. The 13th Amendment followed after the Civil War, which abolished slavery. 14th Amendment abolished slavery except if you're in prison, you can be enslaved there. And basically you see that going on in California and other states that have prisons for profit, and they throw people in jail and put extra charges on them and things like that. And they use that slave labor that is in the prison then to make profit for the state and also for the investors of those prisons. So that's why the United States has such a high prison population, much higher than many other countries combined. So that was the 13th Amendment, abolished slavery. And the 14th Amendment gave citizenship to slaves ex-slaves, and also gave the right to vote with the 15th Amendment to ex-slaves. Of course, women didn't have the right to vote at that point. That required several more years and a lot of bloodshed and head knocking by the police and other organizations to try to keep the women down and not allow them to vote. So going into United States history is very interesting and also very disgusting at times. So coal came about as a fossil fuel that was largely produced by Irish, Polish, and Italian immigrants. They went into the mines and to great risk to themselves and much death because they didn't have unions back then. Also, oil was discovered in Titusville, Pennsylvania in 1859. So that was the real first discovery of oil here in the United States. Petroleum, as they called it. Also, Texas, Oklahoma, Iran, Iraq, Middle East, Africa, and South America eventually became, oil producers. And a weird output of oil extraction is the flaring off of this horrible gas called natural gas, which is methane. And at the time, they saw no use for it. And then people started to realize, hey, it's flaming. We can actually harness this in some way and make this into a combustible fuel. So in 1980, President Carter, which people don't even know he's a president anymore, but he's a good person, but what he did here was horrible. Right now he's a great person. He's building habitats for humanity and things like that, but his decision and his doctrine is called the Carter Doctrine in 1980, which people don't know about. It gave the USA supposedly the right to use force to defend national interests in the Middle East, such as if we felt our oil, not our oil, if their oil was in jeopardy by someone else, then we had the right to go in there with multiple, and unlimited force to defend the right to get that oil and to make sure it's safe for the United States. So 1 gallon of gasoline is equal to 55 men working for 8 hours a day. So 1 gallon of gasoline produces enough energy for 55 men to work 8 hours a day. That's the equivalency. So essentially what it is it's cheap slave labor. Oil is, and gasoline is, and natural gas is, and coal is cheap slave labor. It's easy to extract out of the ground, and it's a labor force that supplies unlimited amount of power. I mean, it's amazing how much power it can give. Now, the side effect, of course, is carbon dioxide. People in the United States are working for a wage since 2009 at $7.25 an hour, $7.25 an hour, which is horrible. People say we can't afford to pay more. I'd like to invite any congressman or senator or any idiot that says $7.25 is more than enough for any person. You cannot even rent a place for that. You'd have to have multiple roommates, and you can't feed yourself. You can't pay for insurances, and you can't pay for all these other accoutrements that we have nowadays. So basically, $7.25 an hour is economic slavery. So the slavery continues. It's just economic slavery now. Banks loan out money easily through credit cards and things like that, but then you have to pay. The prime rate right now is 3% or 5% or whatever in the United States from the Federal Reserve, but the charge card companies charge you 19, 22, 25, 30% interest. So that's where the economic slavery continues here in the United States. Oil and natural gas as a result, and also coal, is being used as a fossil fuel still in this country, whether it's to produce electricity or directly from our cars. Carbon dioxide rate right now reached a high of 422, 423, in some parts 425 I saw the other day. The last time carbon dioxide was at 400 parts per million, which is 22, 25 less than it is now, 400 parts per million. Oceans were 70 feet higher, and temperatures were 3 degrees Celsius higher. So there's a delay of 10 to 30 years for temperatures to catch up to carbon dioxide rate. So we're living in the year 2000 right now, and we're in for a world of hurt because the oceans at 400 parts per million, not 422, were 70 feet higher, and temperatures were 3 degrees Celsius higher. So that was 3 million years ago. So land, when they say, oh, temperatures have only risen, and I totally disagree with this statement. This is a lie. They're using the start of industrialization as 1860 or 1880 on, and that's not true at all. It's actually 1750, the year 1750. But land heats up much more quicker than does the ocean. So when they say it's only gone up 1.1 degrees Celsius, you see the results here throughout the United States and around the world. The severe drought, floods, fires, all such things, crop loss. And that's because the land heats up much quicker than does the ocean. So if it's only 1.1 degrees overall, the real temperature on land is probably 3 degrees increase Celsius. if not more. And the result is you start seeing these massive floods and everything, because when the air is warmer, 1 degree increase in temperature, only 1 degree, is a 7% increase in water vapor in the atmosphere. They're saying 1.2 degree rise since 1880. Again, I'm saying it's 1.9 degrees at least since 1750. And that would be a 14% in water vapor, which corresponds to the amount of flooding going on here in the United States when there's a deluge. You're getting these things called 1,000-year floods. How they determine that is pure BS, because no one was around in the western United States 1,000 years ago. So they don't, or southern states. They don't know how high the water was. This is just some number they're throwing out. What they need to say is this is a never seen before record flooding. We're in trouble, things like that, the media, rather than saying 1,000-year flood. Total lie. So right now, you're having the La Nina effect around the whole world, and that's droughts, fires, floods. You're seeing it. But eventually El Nino will take precedence, and what that'll result in is that a venting of heat in the Pacific, instead of being down deep in the ocean, the heat comes to the surface, and it's going to cause so much problems around the whole world. I don't know what exactly it's going to cause, but what it will do is totally change the environment we're living in right now, and at the very least, it's going to cause massive heating of the atmosphere. Also, you're having the Arctic with heat gain. The Arctic is melting at a crazy amount of rate. They're saying 4 times, 7 times the amount of the rest of the world. And the result of that, with the melting and the heating of the Arctic, is there's less of a temperature difference gradient between the tropics and the Arctic. Now, they're still far apart, but what you're seeing as a result of that is a lack of wind throughout the whole world. And the jet stream is now shredded. So what that enables is when the low pressure comes over, starts dumping rain, it sits and goes very slowly on its direction, and it can dump, as we're seeing down south right now, a foot and a half of rain, which is insanity. So the things don't move very quickly, and now it's worked its way from Dallas, Texas, over to Louisiana and Mississippi, and eventually go to Florida Panhandle. Whoever knows where else after that. So methane venting is a result of the Arctic heating. You're going to end up with permafrost loss and permafrost thaw. So that can contribute to runaway heating, and it's a very dangerous situation. Methane is a greenhouse gas, and people argue about the numbers. I don't care. Whether it's all 5 points or what is correct, it doesn't matter. Methane is 162 times more potent as a greenhouse gas in the first 2 years. The years 2 to 20, it is 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than as carbon dioxide. And from year 20 to 100, it is still 30 times more potent as a greenhouse gas. Please don't argue the numbers. It has nothing to do with it. The fact is we're going to get involved in runaway heating very soon. So the background rate right now of extinction is 10,000 times the normal rate. We're seeing animals and things disappearing. For instance, the monarch butterfly now is almost totally wiped out. My wife and I have seen, I think, 1 or 2 monarch butterflies all year. We used to see them all the time. The speed of change is what the real problem is. This is going at such a rate, the heating of the earth is going at such a fast speed that crops and animals and trees and nature cannot keep up with the rate of change. And that's what the problem is. Yeah, you can live through a 1 degree increase or a 5 degree with the drought and the floods and things like that. The governments won't be there to support you at that point, but you can live through it if it took 100 years or 500 years, whatever, to do this. But it's doing this in a matter of decades, if not year by year. Now we're seeing these massive changes. And it's the speed of change that's going to kill everything. Once the runaway heating starts, it's going to be too late. It might be happening right now. It's like the event horizon for a black hole. You don't know when you're in it, and I suspect right now we're at the edge, if not in the runaway heating scale of things, and it's getting severely out of control, and people don't even know it's happening. You talk to friends and family, they don't have a clue what's happening. I drove a lady to the airport the other day that she's an international traveler. She's been on 6 international trips. She didn't know what was going on around the world. I want to go visit Portugal and Spain. I said, well, 2,000 people just died this summer in Portugal and Spain due to heat. There have been massive droughts, massive heatings, massive fires in France and things like that. No clue as to what was happening around the world. How can you be a world traveler and not know what's happening? Well, that's because the media is not reporting it. You wouldn't know unless you're personally involved in it. So now California has instituted the idea of having no combustion cars sold by 2035. That is way too slow and way too late. Everyone thinks, oh my God, how can we do this massive change so quickly? We need something immediate. You can't wait till 2035. By 2035, at the rate of things changing right now, you have to be honest about this and go, we're probably not going to have a government. We're probably not going to have a civilization as you know it. We're going to have a massive breakdown of everything. The grid will be gone, and then people will just boil alive in their houses when temperatures get up that high. There was an estimate out there that said by 2053, the heat index here in this area will be 125 degrees Fahrenheit. In Gettysburg, Lancaster, PA, 2 counties over, the heat index by 2053 will be 125 degrees. That is unsurvivable, not only because the temperatures are so high during the day, but at night, most likely the heat index will probably stay in around 100 degrees or so, and your body cannot cool down if the electrical grid goes down. Everyone thinks that I'll just do the air conditioner. What do you do if the electric goes off? You're screwed. Okay, so, by 2035, as I said, I fully expect no civilization if they don't get on top of this issue and then a massive scale, not this half measures and pretend stuff and just mouthing what they're going to do. Going to do something is not actually doing something, and doing it in the future is not doing anything. You can expect total government collapse, no support from governments. You saw that during COVID outbreak, that how many governments here in the United States especially, they did not support you initially, and when they did, it was half measures, and you still lost tons of money, and you couldn't survive at this rate for a long period of time. And then also the grid collapse is what we're risking. So right now we're headless and leaderless worldwide, not only in the United States, which is a prime example of what's going on. I mean, ultimate greed and not doing the right thing, and it's disgusting is what's happening. But worldwide, we're headless and leaderless. No one steps up and tells the truth as to what's going on. No one will report like these kind of reports I'm doing every week. Not that hard to do. The heads, if I can do this, they can do this. They could have talks every night or once a week and give a reason why we have to engage and be involved in this. But they're not about to do that. No politician would dare risk his career. And we've got to get rid of career politicians and the idea you're in there for life, basically, or 20 years, whatever. We're seeing these old geezers in the Congress, don't have a clue, don't want to move, and they're very comfortable in their lifestyle, even though they have grandchildren and children, and they don't want to change things. They just want to keep it going, keep the money rolling in. Well, newsflash, the money will not keep flowing after 2026. Repeat after me, the money will not keep flowing after 2026. So this is what's going to happen. No case is being made by the politicians as to why we have to engage in this climate change thing head on. There's no fireside chat like Franklin Roosevelt had back during World War II. The media, they're not linking. When they show news articles, they're often split a drought situation and then put up 4 other articles in, then put a flood situation and put 4 other articles and then talk about the electric vehicle situation. They don't put them back to back. They don't explain why this is happening. They'll say, oh, this weather system is hanging over Louisiana and is not moving. They won't say why it's happening. They won't say about a shredded jet stream. They won't tell you exactly what is going on with climate change. They'll get these experts in talking about, Donald Trump and being searched and everything, and the Kardashians and some dumbass doing a famous person in their jury trial and everything else, but they won't explain climate change. And when they do get someone to explain it, it's some mealy-mouthed, sold-out mealy-mouthed, sold-out person who pretends to be a real scientist and know what's going on, and they do not. You can find a real climate change advocate, and they can actually talk rings around any scientist right now. My wife and I experienced that. We talked to 4 graduates from Princeton, Yale, and they didn't have a clue that the Arctic was melting and the effects of that with the permafrost and everything else and methane clathrates. They had no clue. We're 2 bumbling people that have studied climate change, and we actually ran rings around people with doctorate degrees. So take your degree, sit on the toilet, and do the right thing with it after you're all done. So this is what must be done. This is climate change right now. We're experiencing it. This is what must be done. We need action right away. There are no worldwide protests. There are no college students or high school students involved in protest. What is going on? Your future. Get away from your baby phones. Get away from your TV. Get away from your baby phones and start occupying places, start protesting, start developing a situation worldwide. Quit being wimpy about things. This is ridiculous. The high school and college students, their futures are definitely in jeopardy, and they probably won't make it to my age for sure. So why are people not participating? Why are people not giving talks like this? This should be one of millions of talks right now. Should be, oh well, another person talking about climate change. Yeah, I get it. Okay, I'll listen for a little bit, and then I'll come up with my own talk. So this is childish behavior. Are they scared? Are they apathetic? Have they given up? Yeah, that's probably the case. But what it comes down to is childish behavior. They don't want to know. We've run into people over and over again that turn a blind eye, shut down, shut up when things are going on. So the politicians, they feel, will take care of it all. Well, this is the result. Right now, we're in the middle of climate change. A hellscape on Earth filled with all and every nightmare that can be imagined. You know, this is what's coming. A hellscape on Earth filled with all and every nightmare that can be imagined. So I'll catch you next week. That'll be talk number 196, believe it or not, and that'll be on September 2nd. Okay, catch you then. See ya.